Mark, it's so good to see you, brother. Everything going well in your world?
Things are going good, brother. Good to see you again.
You too, man. Thank you for following up with me. I know you're deep into the NIL space, and I work in college athletics as well as the NFL. But this NIL thing is completely rearranging itself. So, for context, man, what do you do, and what is your relationship to young men and women in the NIL space?
Yeah. So what I do now, and I've this is my 18th year in helping young men in the college athletic space, mostly football. And it started at Arizona State. You and I, we go back on that. But I'm an
Hmm.
agent now, so I represent young men in the NIL space as far as rev share and NIL/collective and marketing space. Got into this role because my last job in college athletics was what's now the general manager position, which what I it's what I did at the University of Florida with the Florida Gators. And I've seen, every in and out of this business, the goods and the highs and the lows. Sometimes it got ugly, other times it was good. And I
Hmm.
was actually the first NIL director, GM in this business that was ever hired for a specific sport. So as I got out of the business and or out of the college athletic
College,
space,
yeah.
working for an actual athletic department, had a lot of former athletes and families reach out needing help, whether it was in the portal recruiting, trying to figure out what's my son's market value, how does this work, how do we negotiate. So I just started helping out a bunch of guys, with deals. And I was like, well, why don't I just start an agency? Because I've dealt with agents, when I was in that role at Florida. I know salary caps, I know the budgets, I know, who has what, I know how athletic departments work. And I've seen it go wrong so many times that I was like, this is a space where I could really help. And my ultimate background in college athletics was player development. And this is how you and I, AJ, have a relationship starting
Hmm.
from academics to player development to director of recruiting. So I've worked in all aspects of this, but my ultimate, I would say, why in this business is helping young men in college athletics and football that I've worked in specifically succeed. And I saw this as an opportunity to, number one, even though NIL and the financial wealth of what these players make now may not be what people see as development,
Right.
it actually is. It gives these young men a chance to build a financial foundation and really change their lives if they have the right team around them and the right folks around them to help them develop it right.
Good.
And
So
I
that's the
and yeah,
sorry to cut you off, Marcus. So that's the wraparound for NIL. But let's stay here for a moment.
mhm.
We hear astronomical numbers being associated with NIL, particularly in this current iteration. There's the House legislation, which is revenue sharing. There's NIL that can then stack on top of that. But what type of deals are we really talking about? What is the economic threshold here that you're seeing? D1 Big Four programs experience.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it varies. So, for example, let's take Power Four conferences, right? Um, it varies from position to position, school to school, conference to conference. But I would say I'm just talking about my clients. The average contract is somewhere around $420,000 a year.
Mm, mm.
And I have some people who are making multi-million dollar contracts. And then I have others that are making, under six-figure contracts. But the average is around $420,000 a year.
All right, so we're talking significant dollars, potentially life changing, depending on the young person's financial family background. But what kind of goes through a young man's mind when he knows that he's going to get that in either a lump sum distribution or broken out into payment cycles? What what's going through their mind?
All right. So it's what goes through their mind and what goes through their parents' mind and what goes
Okay,
through
yeah,
my mind, right?
okay,
What
right,
goes through their mind is, man, I'm like, and this is honest. When they go on these interviews, they're always going to say the right thing, but the reality of it and the actions behind it are, I'm going to get a car. nine times out of 10, it's going to be a Hellcat. All right. A
Okay.
$51,000 car
Okay.
that, everybody else had. So I'm going to get a car. I'm going to get, and unfortunately, which is crazy because they still are into this stuff, but they buy jewelry. But I deal with a lot of guys that are in the SEC conference, which is in the South. But
Hmm.
they spend money on those, and they have no plan. So going through their mind is, I'm going to go buy this and that, and then I'll save the rest. They don't think about taxes. They don't know taxes. They don't understand them. A lot of the time, the parents don't,
Right.
and they don't know savings. So they just like, I got a lot of money. I'm not going to check the account. I'm just going to do what I need to do. The other thing is, I need to give money to help my family. How much
Hmm.
money do the families need? The parents are thinking, I need money for X, Y, and Z. Can you help me out? Right.
Right. Yeah.
And a parent might need 10,000. Like in their situations, they're like, if I had $5,000 to $10,000, I could take care of these things and get ahead, which is
Hmm.
fine. But once you give the first five or the 10,
Right. Right.
they keep asking. And then in my mind, I'm like, hey, you're about to, I have a player right now who on the 15th is going to receive a $200,000 check.
Mm.
And he's never made a dime in NIL in his life. And I'm like, hey, we need to set you up. You're going to get this much money. Understand this. And he's like, man, I'm about to splurge. I'm going to
Hmm.
take a
Hmm.
trip
Hmm.
July 4th. And I'm like, no, this is what we're going to do, because this amount of this check is going to go to taxes. This is going to go to paying your bills. And your meals, housing, everything you're getting the check for still already paid for outside of what you're going to get. You need to put
Right.
the rest of this away. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. I couldn't fathom being 19 years old, dealing with $400,000. Unfathomable money from back in my day. In one regard, I'm glad that there's some compensation that the young people are receiving. I don't know how sustainable it is at this level of monies, especially if a significant portion of that is donors. But regardless, before we talk about some of the challenges of inheriting that amount of money, what positives have you seen in terms of impact upon individuals, families to some extent? What's sort of the upside of the NIL beyond just an infusion of huge amounts of cash? Are there other benefits that you're seeing?
I mean, I've seen a lot of benefits. Number one is, not everyone, but a lot of these young men come from situations where they are, scrapping at the bit to trying to get by. So if it's a difference between the family paying the light bill in a month, or,
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of these people are literally in survival mode,
Yeah.
AJ,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it gets them out of survival mode. The other things too is building that financial foundation. If you have the right team around you and the right advisement around you, which comes back to player development, and this is before I got in this role, the young men who had the right team around them, which gave them the right advice when I was at the University of Florida, they really built wealth. And I know, like, a couple $1,000 is not going to build your wealth, but if you're getting $1 million or $500,000, you really have the opportunity. And you and I both know the statistics of actually making to the NFL. You
Right.
really have the opportunity to build wealth. And a lot of the young men took advantage of that. And if, as long as people advise them and walk them through, it's giving us the opportunity. I'm saying us because I was an athlete. I'm a young black man,
Yeah.
and so it's giving us the opportunity to do that. Here's the other thing too, which a lot of people don't think about. These young men, when you're making this kind of money, the identity of yourself, which a lot of people think, oh, they're just going to go out and flash some money like the rappers do. That's not the case. And
Okay.
don't put that label on us, because that's not fair. They're actually doing everything to be a little bit more professional,
Okay.
to make sure they secure what they have. And they're maturing faster. They're acting more mature. They're doing more in the community and giving back. Like the things that these young men do that I've seen to give back to the local
Mhm.
programs or the schools, we would have never seen that at this level before,
Okay.
because they actually care.
That's interesting. You talk about the percentage of NFL guys that make it to the league. I just came off my NFL rookie talk, and there's guys in the room that are making less at the NFL than they made sort of in NIL. So that's a nuance. There's also a dynamic to where, to your point about maturing faster, I've seen more men in long-term relationships or marriage as rookies than I had sort of in previous years. And I think there is something about, living up to your financial status and trying to take that very serious. Can you share any examples, just for context, about a person that's done the money thing right and they are possibly on the pathway to generational wealth, kind of what they did, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll give you two examples. One is a young man who I won't say his name. You
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
know him. We'll talk offline about that.
Okay.
But he was in a situation where he's like, "Hey, I have the chance to make a lot of money." He was my actually one of my first clients, and got in the portal, got in the right situation, made a lot of money over 6 months, over $500,000.
Hmm.
And he was like, "Look, I have these injuries. This might not work out for me. So I need to make sure when this is all said and done, which it could be over in the next 6 months, and I have a college degree, I want to go pursue, I want to be a football coach, right?"
Okay.
So he saved his money. Like he made a lot of money and he saved it, but it gave him the opportunity to go work and be a graduate assistant and, you know, make 500 to $1,000 a month. But he had a nest egg and he saved it. And
Okay.
now he's in a situation where he's able to be a college coach, right?
Okay. Hmm.
So he saved his money knowing his plan, having a plan and process, and he was able to pursue his dream. So that's one. The other one is had another player who he's made a lot of money, uh, but he was able to learn about taxes, having having a tax person, a financial person, a foundation, right? Started a
Okay.
foundation,
Hmm.
hired the people who, his community, you know how it is. People are
Yeah.
always going to ask for money and for help. So he started a foundation. And he was with a team that created, hey, you can write this off, you can write that off, but you can hire these people. They can be on salary. You can be on salary. So even though he was taking care of everybody else and writing things off, this foundation was actually out being advocates in the community,
Hmm.
helping people. But
Okay.
he used his money to do so. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you would hope that that would be the norm or the majority, but it sort of can go either way. So shifting from the benefits, what are some of the challenges you're seeing, to speak to the player development side of it, where one day you're broke, next moment you got mad bank, you got pressures coming at you left and right. At the same time, you're still 18, 19, and there's a certain emotionality and risk and dynamic that's tied to the age set. From a player development or a player support or player success beyond just getting the financial resources, how do you go about that? What are you seeing, and what would you like to talk about there?
Okay. So there's a lot of positives in this space, but there are always negatives, like it would be in anything. It's the people around you that,
Hmm.
if you're not careful, that's the number one thing. So for young men, you're 18 years old. So before NIL even existed, if
Hmm.
you were a top recruit going to the University of Florida, LSU, Nebraska, all schools I've worked at before, these players are celebrities in their area. Arizona
Famous.
State,
Hmm. They're
famous. They're
famous. Yep.
famous, right?
Yep.
And everyone wants their attention. This is before these
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
were making
Yeah.
6 figures.
Yeah.
Add 6 figures to the deal. Because
Hmm.
before, these guys had everybody on them, women, friends, whatever. And these guys were like, well, I'd like to go out and have a good time, but I got $50. I can't. Now
Right.
they're like, whatever we want to do, we do it.
Hmm.
And at the age of 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, it is very easy, especially in the culture, in any culture, it's always been this way, to be like, oh, I got it. Let's go
Hmm.
do it. And I can show you I got it. And
Hmm.
and so in the player development piece with the self identity, it's because we're competitors. Any challenge we want to not only feel like we can conquer, but show that we can conquer it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so it's like, I'm gonna show y'all I can conquer this. I'm not only good on the field, I got the money. But and this
Right.
is a young mindset, and they're
Hmm.
not. And so that's a huge thing. So for example, I was talking to a dad the other day, and great father, man. This father did an outstanding job with not just one son, but a lot of his sons. But he was looking at his bank account, and it was like, you just spent $40,000 last month on your girlfriend, taking her on trips and going out to eat. And now that's this kid's an anomaly. He makes a lot more money than not the norm NIL, but it's like you go and spend two, three, $4,000 on your girlfriend or significant other, right?
Right. Right.
That's a lot of money, and
Hmm.
these are lessons we have to learn. Or another example is I have a young player, athlete of mine, just enrolled, got a nice check, and he's like, I want to go buy a car. And I'm like, well, why do you need this car? Well, everybody else has them.
Yeah.
Everybody else on the roster. So, but I'm like, all those other guys that have cars have already proven themselves and gotten to their second contract. Well,
Right.
everybody else got one, and all the other rookies that got one too don't have the advisement behind you. So you're going to go spend, $50,000 on this car when your contract is only, like, he's not making the big money. Your contract is only 120.
Hmm.
That's half your money, but that's before taxes. Let's not forget that. So
Hmm.
all your money's gone. So it's like, what are we? So those are some negatives. Is like everyone's trying to either keep up with the Joneses or
Yeah.
take care of everyone else around them. Those are the two issues I have, and we can get deeper into this later. But to answer your question, that's what it is.
And we definitely will. So two things you said. One was this is consistent with the age set, right? And that's important to know that the impulsivity, the comparison, the sort of want to sort of show outward status, that is consistent with the age set. And so that's not a fault in character that is consistent. It is helpful though to have parents and mentors and advisors and agents who can name that for them so that they have language and vocabulary to explain perhaps impulsivity or wanting to live in the immediate moment, and then to talk more about sort of long-term preparation. So that's important. The person's just not acting out of norm. It's consistent with the age set. The second piece you talked about was the capacity for another person that cares for you to see your spending, right? Because like the dad could see that the young man was spending frivolously and then could challenge him on that or ask some questions. So one strategy to help manage money is a love source, someone that don't want your money, a confidant of some sort, some that has your best interest in mind, has the capacity to help monitor. Back in the day, you had to go to the bank to get information. But now I know my wife is on some of my kids' account, which is interesting. But if they had high money, yeah, you'd want some watchful eyes. So that's one thing to sort of think about. But the piece you talk about is how does one really prepare for the future when all of their biology and messaging is sort of intensely in the moment? How do you how do you help them accelerate the maturity timeline? From your own conversations with them, how do you plant that seed that your behaviors now will impact you positively or problematically in the future?
Man, that might be the question for this whole all this cohort of players that's in this space right now.
Hmm.
Number one is stay humble. You haven't made it yet, right?
Hmm.
It's like, okay, I tell my clients, what's your ultimate goal? We have the parents are on the conversation. I talk to parents actually more than I talk to my clients, but it's like, what's the goal? Go to the NFL. Okay. Remember, we have these conversations back at Arizona State. Who wants to go to
Hmm.
the NFL? Everybody raise their hand.
Right.
So my clients is like, what's the goal? Go to the NFL. Graduate. Okay. So they make all this money. Remember when you talk about that cool pose, that
Hmm.
sitting back,
Hmm.
and it's like you can't do that. You may have think you've made it because you're getting $700,000 your rookie year, but what is the ultimate goal? And so so from a player development standpoint, it's a daily conversation with these young men. Hey, what did you do today? How'd it go? What can you do better? Remember, you need to still keep improving. It's just, I mean, it's time.
Hmm.
And it's like being a parent. You know, your kid gets accepted to a university. They haven't made it yet. You're still calling them. You're still checking on them. You're
Right.
still, and so it's time and consistency of the message of what's the ultimate goal and keeping that at the focus. Because if your ultimate goal is just to make a bunch of money and just go do whatever, then okay, this isn't going to work out for you. But if this is your goal and you're committing to it, we're all agreeing, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, auntie, whoever, if we're all agreeing to this is the goal, then this is what we're going to do. But
Hmm.
there's also an open room where it's like, if you don't want to do this anymore, that's okay. And we're still going to be there for you. But you
Hmm.
just need to be honest with us and let us know.
Hmm.
And we've dealt with players like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. Hey, man, still got your back. We'll
Yep.
help you find the next thing. But and that's what we do with that's what I do with my guys is, hey, I'm here for you. And if you don't want to do this, I went through this just a couple weeks ago. Player didn't want to do it anymore. And I was like, okay, so we talked through it and I'm still there for you. He ended up sticking it out. But
Hmm.
um it's that it's like a family and it's constant development. But it's
Hmm.
also you got all this money, but the ultimate goal is this. Th- what are we doing? Staying humble, and you haven't made it yet. And also, too, before they get all this money, like for my guys, they're all required to set up a financial plan with an advisor and a tax strategist. And
Okay.
so they're not getting all this money. Like
Okay.
if I have one guy, he's getting over $80,000 a month. He only takes $2,000 to himself.
Okay.
And he's hungry. He's like, yeah, I haven't made it yet. I'm still living the same life I've always lived.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing a team. A team is critically important.
Hmm.
Leadership from the young person, right? They're the center stage. They'll need counsel and support, but they're the captain of the ship. And then a cadence, some regularity, some touch points where you gather and you examine the plan and you offer feedback. So those are some additional kind of strategies. Um, what as you mentioned, any 19-year-old will have, especially if they didn't have funds, but they had fame from being associated with a D1 program, will have all the trappings that comes with that. But then you lay on top of that significant dollars. What becomes the threats to that young person? I think anyone in that age that could have threats, things they need to manage, but you then stack in not just popularity fame, but money fame, and then people who want to kind of latch onto that fame. So, what do you think are some of the threats sort of high earning young people need to be mindful of?
Number one, relationship, like romantic relationships.
Okay.
Uh, that's a huge one. That's a
Mm-hmm.
huge one. Um, it's always been a huge one in this business. You and I both have known that, but
Mm-hmm.
now it's multiplied, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Friends and family.
Entourage.
That's entourage, entourage. Uh, you know, you got one friend who's been your boy, and he's like, hey, can I borrow 10? Can I borrow 20? He never
Mm-hmm.
pays back, but that's your guy, so you're not gonna sweat it. But then when you have money like this and they know, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey man, I need 1,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Hey,
everybody has needs all of a sudden. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the tough part about it is, like I was that, I'm that way. Nice with kids, right? We got
Mm-hmm.
kids. And my
Mm-hmm.
daughter
Mm-hmm.
called me every week asking for
Yeah.
money. And
Give
as
me
much
some
as
of
I
that
want to
power.
say, yeah, say no, it's just like, ah. But when you have that kind of money and you're not managing it right, you're like, okay, so that's the number two. Number three is, and this is something that isn't talked about much, but we start seeing things happen, and it is happening. I had three of my players go to graduation party in a really rough city in Louisiana a few weeks ago, and they all got stuck up and
Mm-hmm.
robbed. But you're a target, and depending where you're at geographically, or what it is that when you drive the Hellcat that everybody wants to buy, you're not only just a target um, for other people that look like us, looking for us to do.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that's the case, but uh, also the police.
Right.
You're a young black man, and even though you're a 4.0 student and you got a scholarship, but you're driving a Hellcat with tinted windows
Hmm.
at 12 o'clock at night going to a party, that you're a target.
Hmm.
And that's also a threat too, because these guys, they live a lifestyle like, unfortunately, we've talked about this before when we came out with the what's really real, but we look like rappers, and rappers portray a certain image, and to the people that don't know us as a culture, they
Hmm.
place that label on us, and when we're out, we're a moving target for certain interactions to potentially happen. Not whether they can be good or bad, we never know. But why even make it a question and then put yourself in a situation? And so I would say, romantic relationships, family and entourage, and then also how you carry yourself.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because you're a target.
Yeah. So let's dissect those three. So sexual relationship, and by that you're saying that they have, because historically women would initiate. I mean, men would initiate generally in relationship, but through social media and people having access to everyone in ways they didn't, there's ample opportunity for women to initiate. They're
Mhm.
also at a biological stage where sex naturally is on their mind. They're excited about that and don't mind it at all. But there's there's a saying, not all money is good money, but there's also a saying, not all sex is good sex, because in your 20s you're developing your sexual expectations, and that is what you then rely on in future monogamous marriage. But if you have an overindulgence in sex, especially with multiple partners, as you're developing your, what you like and what you don't like, you're setting yourself up for future frustration. Nor do you take the lessons, or being checked by your sexual partner. If she pushes you too hard, you just won't deal with it. You'll move on, and so you get into a habit of just moving body to body and not learning, maximizing physical sex, but not balancing that out with psychological, emotional, and intellectual intimacy as well. Um, but kind of what's going on in these DMs, in these young men's DMs?
I mean, and that's what makes it crazy, is because now, because everybody, this generation is on Instagram or whatever,
Hmm.
and they're flaunting their lifestyle, right?
Hmm.
I'm taking
Hmm.
this trip, I got this chain, this is my car, going here, going there, I'm eating here. And so it's like, women, not all women, but
Yeah,
there's
yeah, no.
some women,
Hmm.
right, that are just looking and being like, oh, they got this and that, I could live like this,
Hmm.
let me DM them. And they're in
Hmm.
their DMs like crazy, like crazy. But here's
Hmm.
the thing: when you were talking about multiple partners, right? The issue with it, because as a young man, I would have done the same thing. Pretty
Right.
woman hits me up in my DM, yeah, I'm going for
Yeah,
it.
you're like, hey, yeah.
And yeah, and it's like, I've got these five this week, but then I got these DMs. It's different now, because now they
Mhm.
have thousands of hundreds of thousands of options to choose from because of social media. When
Right.
you and I were going to college, we didn't have that. You had what was on campus.
Right.
So it's like they're just changing every week, every week, every week. But unfortunate situation. One of my clients, I've had a situation with a female. What had his top, his starting five, ticked
Hmm.
off one of them because he didn't want to be with her. He was honest about it, and boom, got a case. Out of college, deal done. Stuck back in the town he wanted to be in, um, and it's over for him. And he lost everything, and it was unfair. Went to court. The facts came out in the deposition. He didn't do anything, but the schools. Here, you and I both know this. The schools rules, right, and the law are two
Right.
separate deals. And the school had kicked him out, and he wasn't getting back in. And so he's done. There's nothing he can do. He can sue, but at this point it's too late because the roster has moved on, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That just speaks. I mean, Obviously you would hope there's someone in his ear from his love circle, mom, dad, uncles, whatever the case may be, that would caution them. But if you
Mhm.
look at the rookie programming, they have two mandatory subject matters. One is healthy relationships. That's the piece I do with some teams. But then they also have embezzlement, entrapment, where
Yes.
there's these circles of people who are targeting, researching high earning men, and they're intentionally using attractive women to exploit these young men. And so, programs out there that are working with these kind of young folks who don't have some individuals like yourself, they have to do inundate the young men with education just to reinforce. Because one of your other threats was situational awareness, right? Do you go into an unknown part of town? What's your feel for that environment? What is your instincts telling you? And do you flash in those kind of environments, right? So situational awareness or safety awareness is also something that requires some education, because
Mhm.
the 20-year-old one wants to put you out there, and then you feel like you're invincible. That's just human nature. But then to put a target on your back, like you talk about, it's just those cautionary conversations that have to occur. I cut you off, though. I'm sorry, brother.
No, no, no. You're absolutely right. Like, and this is the tough thing too is we can talk like you talk about programming, right? When you're a rookie and you get your programming. I've seen your programming. I've seen other programs. I've been at different programs, and some of them are just checking the box,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to work. And not only just checking the boxes, like, well, who's there every day for them?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we've seen it all. I mean, we were at Arizona State together for I don't know, probably 14 years of my career in different
Mm-hmm.
roles, right?
Right.
And Arizona State's a monster, right? And then you just see what the potentials could happen, and then when you go to other places and people are just checking the box. I'm not saying it's their fault for letting these things happen, because at the end of the day, people make decisions, but there's a lot of burden that's put on these and these embezzlement things. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the thing recently about the text that went out on how to
Yeah.
entrap an professional player. Okay, so but that's
Yeah.
real. And
I don't
these
know if that one's
players,
real, but the concept of it is real. I feel you.
concept is real. Yeah.
Right.
So these players go out there and think, well, she's not like that. She's not going to do that. Yes, not all, no, no, not all, they're not all like that by any means, but there are some,
Mm-hmm.
and it does happen. And then the other thing is like becoming a target. Like when these young men decided to go to that party, I was like, you don't need to go. Mom was calling me saying we tried to tell them, but they want to go, and I'm like, hey, you guys don't need to go. X, Y, and Z
Mm-hmm.
is going to happen, and then it happens. Now, unfortunately, but fortunately, the lesson was learned, and nothing harmful happened.
Okay.
But
Good.
unfortunate, so the lesson was learned, right? But and they were leaving, they were all enrolling in college in like a week to 10 days later, all three of them.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, it just it happened, but fortunately they learned. But these are different things. When I was 17, 18, 19, 20, I thought I was invincible in
Right.
every way.
Yep.
Give me $100,000, I'm Superman.
Right.
But luckily I had the right people around me to, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what these not just young men, but young women in this space too, because they're making money as well. They all need to have, like, I think player development, because I've seen certain programs with the budget and doing this. Well, everybody's getting in the portal every year, so how can we develop them? I think these schools need to do or put more effort into bringing someone in that can be there for, programming, number one. Number two, being there for the student athletes,
Mm-hmm.
because they're at this prime age where they're given money that, people have never seen in their lives, and they're put in that newfound freedom, right? We've talked about
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
for the first time, and it's just a recipe. Well, not always. It's a recipe for a lot of good things, but it's also a recipe for disaster.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you make great points in terms of, you got to introduce concepts, introduce programming, right? But how do you then continue to touch the individual to reinforce certain messages? Well, that's personnel, right? And
Mhm.
the number of personnel that you need to sort of wrap around young men who are in this wonderful yet vulnerable stage of life, right? So you have content, but then you also have care, right? Individuals that care for them on an ongoing basis. You would hope that would come from nuclear family, but institutions and programs, like, athletic programs, need to be thinking about how robustly that's supported. The other piece, though, and I'd like your thoughts on this, is that when you have high NIL earners and the fame that's associated with that, they also isolate. I've seen that to where they isolate and they will, they'll show exposure, or not exposure, but they'll come in for mandatory things. But when it comes to programming at large, they tend to sort of isolate, and that's certainly understandable. So how can that be addressed to where, because in many ways they're protecting themselves, and a part of
Right.
protecting themselves is navigating what they expose themselves to. So there's a protective element to it, but there's also an opportunity to miss out. So if they are isolating, and maybe it is just they have their point person, but what have you seen in this isolation dynamic?
Yeah. I've seen some guys isolate, but it's a weird it's it's kind of a funny aspect to that. The high earners, like the big time guys, they don't
Hmm.
isolate from what I've seen. When
Okay.
I was at Florida in my role with the clients I have, they don't isolate, and I think that's just because they're not trying to prove anything. It's just like, look, I'm just gonna be me. I'm good. They have the right team around them.
Hmm.
The low guys, they're like, hey, we're just trying to make it, so we're all together. It's the
Hmm.
mid guys. It's the
The
guys
mid guy.
making two, 300,000. Um, it's a weird thing, man. I'll give you an example. The coaches I've worked for, the ones that have made it and been successful, extremely successful,
Hmm.
open door policy. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm
Right.
open to listen to anybody. The coaches that haven't been at that level, closed door, set a meeting. So it's just like I don't know what that. I mean, you're better at this than I am, but I don't know what that dynamic is. But
Hmm.
I see the same thing in the players. And so the ones that isolate, I had a tough time with them. I don't have the answer for how to. I'm
Yeah.
not saying
No.
I can't help them, but I had a tough time, especially at Florida. The ones that were in that range were so isolated, and I'm too cool. I don't need to talk to you.
Mhm.
Um, one of my
I'll,
best players. Yeah, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
I said one of the best players I had as far as call him, get involved in the community, was always around the guys. Believe it or not, given what's happening to him, was Anthony Richardson. You
Mm.
know, um, outgoing guy, got along with everybody.
Yeah.
Anytime I called and asked a favor, boom, there, no question. Didn't have
Hmm.
to do it, but and then you go to a mid-range guy and he's just like, nah, I ain't got time for that. Which I don't know what that is. I don't.
Yeah. You know, that's hard to figure out as well. But I think those who do have a window of time with those isolating folks, we want to probe them to say, well, who is your support system? What's your relationship with some elder person, and hopefully that person is kind of giving them the guidance and the direction that had they engaged some of these other initiatives would either co-sign or introduce new information. So yeah, that
Yeah.
isolating part is always challenging. Um, so as we kind of get ready to close, what else should we be thinking about as it relates to the NIL? Well, let me ask you this.
Mhm.
I had proposed at one point to try to build in a curriculum or and some mentorship for high earning cats through their contracts.
Mhm.
But but I know from a recruitment dynamic and kind of what you put into a contract, and then if they don't do it, is there you're then getting into consequences, and you don't want to be there. But can you think of any way to incentivize at least a set period of time where there's intense education and checking in and making sure these guys are starting off a solid foundation? Anything come to your mind, or things that you've seen as successful?
I mean, 100%. I would think. I mean, we brought up a point just a couple minutes ago, but I think it's shifted to where the agencies need to, if they really care, right? And this is where I have a lot of problems with other agencies. There's a lot of great agents out there, a lot of good agencies that do a good job. I think all they care, and not all of them. The issue I have is they care about the image, the social media, how cool they look, the money in the business. Do you really care about the person?
Mm.
That's my biggest thing. And where this whole thing is shifted, and this is where I'm going with this. So, I'm going to bring it back, but
No.
the agencies are the ones who hold the power to the athletes. Now, if you need to call somebody to get through to somebody to pick up the phone, you got to go through the agent these days.
Okay.
Where before it was the mom, the dad,
Right.
the brother, the sister, it's the agents now.
Hmm.
What is the culture of most of the agents in NIL? I can
Right.
tell you, I'm not going to say it, but do they truly care? Do they truly care?
Or
And
is it
so
just financial, right? Transaction.
financial, right? Because if
Hmm.
these agents, and I hear it all the time, like these agents will do a deal and they won't call their guy for 3 months, or these agents will do a deal and their guy gets hurt and they'll just brush them off, and so they don't care. And so my like what we do at our agency, because it's myself, it's Antonio Pierce, who was a player, he was a defensive coordinator in college, he was a head coach in the NFL, and Regina Jackson, who's Jaden Daniels' mom, who cares? It's like we get it, and we actually care. And so, what are the agent? Other they might say they do, they might, do this and that, but when you talk about curriculum and helping, will universities buy into it? I can't speak for a lot of universities. I hope they, like, people who we've worked with before in power positions, executive positions in institutions in athletics, they would go for it. But would certain other people, would they? I don't know. Some
Maybe it could be,
maybe,
yeah, maybe it can
but I
be
think
policy level as all these legislation and rules and finally legislation kind of gets in play, that there can be some consistency across the conference. That way, no one is hesitant to do certain things because they'll lose a competitive advantage. So hopefully, something like, hey, you're about to inherit, or not inherit, but receive a whole lot of money. Here's some things that we got to go through, and some things you have to demonstrate competency around that everyone is required to do. That way it's not optional and caught up in the recruitment dynamic. Hmm.
that's where a CBA comes in place. You know, all this
Sure.
talk of collective bargaining,
Right. Right.
having, like, the NFLPA.
Okay.
That's where this comes in place there, and it's coming. Who runs it? How it goes? Nobody knows yet.
Right.
I'm also a little bit concerned about certain individuals involved in that conversation because I don't think they have the best interest at mind. But that's where it comes into play because the agencies are always going to look at the bottom dollar unless you get people like us that are like, yeah, if you're with us, you're doing this,
Mm-hmm.
and this affects this is built into your contract.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Schools, I think there's going to be a good handful of schools that require that as part of your NIL, right? So, we talk about it, life skills events, champ life events. You got to show up or you're getting docked. I
Right.
mean, that's the best way. Will all schools go for it? I don't know. They should. But then you get this, the CBA together and you have a players association for college. That's something that is required. Um, I mean, AJ, I wish if I had, I wish I could have you talk to all my guys or all of our, or not just my guys, our clients.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we had a roundtable just last weekend in Newport Beach. It was an elite quarterback camp, and you
Okay.
would have fit in perfectly. I don't know why I didn't think about it, but that would have been very educational, not just for players but for parents.
Yeah,
You
no
know,
doubt. No, I appreciate that, Castro. Um, as we get to sort of closing thoughts, um, walk this down the road a little bit, right? So, to your opening remark in terms of benefits, is that you have huge numbers of young people who would not historically have had access to financial opportunity pre NIL now have received some funds. There are countless stories of riches to rags, but I do think the fiscal literacy and the decision making in the financial space is really elevated and permeated in spaces where it historically hadn't been. Obviously, if you don't have financial awareness, then your learning curve is even that much more higher. But I do think the conversation is out there. So I think in the long run, this will help families who pre NIL would have lived completely different lives. The trajectory would have been, you know, whatever it was. But to your point, if you have a generation of people who have some significant dollars to the point where they have discretionary dollars, what do you hope they'll do? You know, once they get out of their warrior class age set, they're more mature, they're in families, their money's working for them. What do you think? What do you hope they'll do? And we know that these are large basketball players, football players, a lot of African American men. What do you hope their impact will be for them personally and collectively?
I mean, I hope the impact would be to not just give back, but not everybody, when you talk about give back, everyone thinks financially.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody, can give back financially, but give back the lessons and the knowledge. Like, knowledge is power, right? So, I fortunately had the right system and mentors around me that gave back to me and taught these lessons and thought about, hey, if you're coming into a lot of money or if you're coming into a little bit of money, this is how you manage it. Because I mean, remember, I mean, I shouldn't say you remember, the 40-year-old you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If more of these conversations happen, and it can come from like these folks that I've been through it, I've made my money, I
Mm-hmm.
did this and that, and now I'm here,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm 40 and I'm happy. So having that conversation with high schoolers, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is your 40? We don't think about that. And I think the more that you think about that, it's like, well, I don't need to have, a 16-bedroom mansion, but
All
I
right.
just want this and this, and I want to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I get there? And a lot of these young men, they've never thought about that. They might
Yeah.
want it, but they're like, well, how do I get there? Like, I thought about that. Like, how do I get there?
Man, you're,
Um,
you're hitting on something critically important. Very few prompts in any educational institution asks a young person to think about who they are. There's not many courses or checkbox situations to where a young person is asked to reflectively think about who they are and who they're going to become. Right?
mhm.
They might muse and try to play around with the question of what is the purpose of life, but the real question ought to be what is the purpose of my life. Just to frame it in that way gives you at least some guiding direction, right? And so I think one of the strategies that all of us can do, and certainly people who have close proximity to young people, is to kind of have "if I knew then what I know now" conversations, right? And to
Mhm.
emphasize the correlation between decisions made now will either bless you or haunt you in the future, right? The 40-year-old you, the 45-year-old you.
Right.
That's something every one of us can do. And there's one thing to never have been told something and then live life. It's one thing to have been told by a few people and live life, but it's one thing to be told by several people that normalizes it, where you then sort of acculturate the question into your own thinking. That's a hell of a point, bro.
Yeah.
That's a hell
Yeah. I
of
mean, shoot, I say it all the time, and I don't know if I owe you royalties, but
a
I use the
point.
40-year-old you every single time I'm
Hmm.
pitching, because it's like, hey, where do we want to be at 40?
Hmm.
Um, and I think when you ask the initial question of giving back, I think there needs to be more folks like us, whether we do it financially or not. So these guys are making this money. Maybe they go to the NFL or NBA, maybe they don't, or WNBA, maybe they don't, but they've had this wealth, and you don't have to give it back. And if you want to give it back, great. But if you don't give it back,
Yeah,
you
give
have
more.
the yeah, you have the you're an example, and you have the knowledge.
Hmm.
And people look up to that, and just giving back the knowledge and asking these young men and women, what do you want life to look like at 40?
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
41 now, you know, and
Young
I'm
man,
all
young
right.
man. Hmm.
I
Hmm.
know, right?
Yeah, because of
But
decisions and support, right? You know, you make
Correct.
decisions. Sometimes they're home runs, sometimes they're foul balls, but
Yep.
we all need support, right? And I think that's the essence of how the conversation started. You know, this is a very unique subset of beautiful young men, but they need support. In theory, and in hopefully in practice, their support is fully supported by parental love. But in the instances where it's not, it makes the player development or the agent component even that much more. But even if it is established in the home, there's the complementary piece that figures like yourself and myself to a lesser extent, perhaps, that we can play. You know, in sort of that if I know now what I know then conversation. Because you know, hopefully the wealth of the community increases, and then that there's correlation to the statistical disparities that we see. That young
Right.
people who come from culture, were raised in culture, benefited from culture, that they partner or intentional in their decision making of time, treasure, and resources to continue to address sort of cultural disparities. Big Marcus, last words are yours, brother. Any closing
Man,
thoughts?
well, I just say I appreciate it, number one. And number two, being an agent in this space and knowing these young men that I work with, I know there's young men and women, but the development and the time that's put in and poured into these young men and women is of high priority right now for so many reasons that we talked about. And if it's not, and if it's not on someone's agenda that is helping these young folks navigate through this, you don't need to be in it
Mm,
because this is very important, and this is the why of what we do. And uh, I think NIL has created a lot of good, and there's some bad, but it's more good. And
mhm,
we just
mhm.
need to keep building on it and getting better.
Offer your last thinking. Offer your last comments to the young man who's receiving NIL, but perhaps just got the check and don't no real support system. Parents love him, but don't really know what the landscape is. How can he advocate for himself? What would you recommend?
Will he do it? Don't spend it.
Yeah, there
So
you go.
depending on the size of your check, go buy one thing that's not extremely. So let's say you get a $10,000 check. Take $1,000 out. Okay, go do what you want with it, and put the rest in savings. Don't touch any. No,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. Everybody's gonna spend a little bit. You got to let them do a little bit of something. But
As you should, as you
yeah,
should.
yep,
You know you want to spoil yourself, but at the same time you want to be able to perpetually spoil yourself, right? And so
yeah,
it's one thing that you know most folks live paycheck to paycheck, but if you have abundant opportunity, right? How do you enjoy the moment, but then also continue to feed off of that? Just to use arbitrary
yeah,
age of adulthood at 40.
yeah.
Marcus, brother.
One more thing.
Oh, I'm
One
sorry,
more
brother.
thing.
Mhm.
Don't tell anybody you got the check.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't tell
Don't spread.
anybody you got
Yeah,
it.
don't spread your money. Don't
Yeah.
don't don't count nobody else's money, and don't tell nobody about your money.
Yep. Yep.
Marcus, appreciate you, brother. We're gonna go ahead and end it. Thank you,
All
guys.
right.
Later. Hold
No,
on.
appreciate
Stay
that.
on. Stay on.